Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bench to Bold. I'm so excited to be able to bring my co host on Journey Through Sports, Life, and Entertainment on with us today. And Lisa knows her as well. So, welcome, Marjorie Herrera Lewis. And thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be joining you for this episode, and we probably have a lot to talk about.
I think so. I like to brag about Marjorie, and I'm not going to stop here. Marjorie is an incredible sports journalist. In fact, she was the first female reporter to ever be invited into the Dallas Cowboys locker room to cover the stories there. And she's a remarkable woman. We definitely have lots in common with our love for sports and flag football and so forth. And also, Marjorie is the author of one of my favorite books called When the Men Were Gone. And I love that book so much. That's how we met. I stalked her and she finally was like, all right, I'll answer this poor woman. And here we are 5 years later, and we're friends and co hosts and business partners. So, Marjorie, thank you. Let's talk about you and sports and your family and all of it.
Okay, great. Well, I love talking about my parents, so I'll start there. I was born and raised in Santa Fe, New Mexico, to two parents who absolutely love sports. My father played every sport in high school and won a state championship in football, and then went off to college and played on his college baseball team. He was a pitcher at St. Mary's College of California up in the Bay Area. I probably should have gone and made it a stop over at the campus while we were at the Super Bowl up in the Bay Area. But anyway, and my mother, she didn't have a lot of opportunities to play sports, of course, for women at that time, but she was still a great athlete and went on to be an excellent golfer, won a lot of golf tournaments in charity events and fundraisers and things locally. And she's also a bowler. She passed on her love for bowling and golf to me. And she could do anything. We'd go out in the backyard and play a little tennis, and she was right there. She could pick it up real fast and do really well. So the sports is just in my DNA, and I'm only 5'2", and I couldn't be a wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, so I became a sports writer.
And that is amazing. I know that your parents have, they did an incredible job. You are very close with your siblings, and being 5'2" has not stopped you from accomplishing all of your goals and dreams. So let's talk about going and where you went to college and getting into the sports world and how that was something that obviously, made our lives better because you're in the sports world.
Well, thank you. Yes, I went to Arizona State University and I studied broadcast journalism. And I actually worked in the broadcasting for a very short time, decided that that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a print journalist. And so I moved into print. My first job out of Arizona State was as a sports writer for a small magazine called the Sun Devil News. And so I got to actually cover my alma mater right away. And that was a lot of fun. And it was a great experience. But when my parents took all five kids to Dallas when I was 12 years old, I had decided at that time that I fell in love with Dallas and I wanted to move here. So after I finished college, I was on the phone with my mother and I said, well, now I'm moving to Dallas. And she's like, what? And I said, well, remember when I was 12, I told you? And she says, but you were 12. So I moved out here and built my career here. I went to work for the Fort Worth Star Telegram for a number of years. And that's when I became the first female Dallas Cowboys beat writer, as you mentioned, Marnie. And then from there, I went to the Dallas Morning News and continued to cover the NFL and college football. And also, so I built my career that way. I've been very fortunate to have come to Dallas. It's been very good to me. Been able to do a lot of things here in the sports world. And then I eventually went to grad school and got a few master's degrees and a doctorate and have been teaching in this area. A lot of students, I turn on my TV and I see former students. I turn on the radio, there they are. I pick up the paper or the internet stories and all, there they are. So it's great to see that the students that I have worked with over the years have become very successful and they're doing good work themselves. So it's been a great move. I'm glad I'm here and I'm glad I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yes, me as well. All right. So, Marjorie, when you were writing for the newspaper, and then they say, okay, we're going to let women into the locker room. Was that something that had they been talking about this and then suddenly it was going to happen, or it was just like one day you walk into work and they're like, you're going into the locker room? So what was that whole thing like?
Yes, actually, I was covering college football, college sports at the time, and I loved college. So it actually started with just my sports editor. He just said, came up to me one day and said, "I'm moving you from college to the NFL, and you're now going to be covering the Dallas Cowboys." Well, that had been unheard of. Nobody had covered the Cowboys. No female had covered a beat or routinely gone into the locker room or traveled with the team or anything like that. So it was a new thing for the team. They were surprised too. I remember talking to Tom Landry and Tech Schramm, the head coach and the GM at the time, and they were both like, "Oh, okay, well, a woman on the beat." So Tom Landry, I found out many years later from Randy White and from Timmy Newsome and some of the guys that played on the team at the time. They told me that Tom Landry had a 15-minute, which was quite unusual to talk about something other than football for 15 minutes. But he talked for 15 minutes to the team about how to be respectful and how to treat me and to make sure that when I'm in the locker room that everybody is properly attired so there would be no embarrassing situations. And that's how it played out. Everything was very professional. There were no embarrassing situations. And that was the Cowboys' introduction to having a woman on the beat. In fact, Everson Walls at one point, he said he was really excited that we had a woman sports writer because now the Cowboys have entered the 1980s. There were other sports writers that were women on other NFL teams. So I guess I brought the Cowboys into the 80s.
And there's a lot of success happened during that time as well. So I think maybe
Yeah,
they should be bringing you back into the locker room, Marjorie.
Yeah, you were there at such a fabulous time. I mean, you were there, and a lot of those guys, when you were there, are now in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, they are. Yes, there are a
Yeah.
lot of Hall of Fame players. That's absolutely right. And I was there for the last several years of Tom Landry, and then the beginning of Jimmy Johnson, you know, time. So a lot of players like Troy Aikman and uh, Michael Irvin and all those guys. I kind of had two different eras, and they're all in the Hall of Fame as well. So it was a good time to be covering the team.
So, did Coach Landry, what were, I know, I mean, I've heard this story, but I think our listeners and viewers would like to hear. So, what were Coach Landry's thoughts about having a woman cover his players and be in the locker room?
Well, he was great to me. I think he was just more concerned about making sure that everything was professional. And I never got any indication from him that he opposed a woman covering the beat or anything like that. In fact, he and I got along very well. You hear a lot of stories about how Tom Landry was very serious, and a lot of people didn't really get a chance to really get to know him because he was so serious, even a lot of his players. But I would go into his office and interview him one on one, and then I would tell him funny stories, maybe about a golf outing with my mother or whatever. And he and I would laugh. And I saw a side to him that I have never heard anyone publicly say they also saw that side. So even other times I'd go interview him and he'd say, "Have you and your mom played golf lately? Any funny stories?" I mean, it was great. So we got along great. In fact, when I was pregnant during the 88 season, the season ended, of course, for the Cowboys that year. They didn't go into the playoffs, so it ended in January. And my daughter was born February 14th. And the day that she was born, the first phone call I got in the hospital was Tom Landry. The very first phone call of congratulations was Tom Landry. And of course, the Cowboys sent champagne and balloons and everything. So it was a great relationship. I look back on those days with great fondness.
Yeah, well, I know that all the guys that were playing on the team during those years are big fans of yours and continue to be. So obviously it goes both ways. All right, so let's talk about When the Men Were Gone, because I love this book and it's available on Amazon, available on at Barnes and Noble and everything. And can you share about When the Men Were Gone and also that it's being made into a feature film? So I'd love to know more about that.
Okay, well, as you can tell, my voice gets a little scratchy here and there now and then. So I have allergies. And for 26 years, I was going to the same doctor for my allergies. He tried to get me to take allergy shots so I could have some relief, but I didn't want to. Well, finally, 26 years later, it was 2011. After walking into the allergy doctor for 26 years, wearing something like what I'm wearing now, that one day I walked in with a t-shirt. For the first time, I wore a t-shirt, and it said the University of Tulsa football, my daughter's alma mater. And the nurse says to me, "Oh, football. I love football. It runs in our family because my great aunt was a football coach." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, my great aunt, she coached football and in Texas." And I said, "Where?" And she said, "In Brownwood," which got my head spinning because immediately I remember Brownwood has won 7 state championships. It's one of the more iconic high school football towns in Texas. And then I asked her, "Well, when was this?" And she said, "During World War II, of course, when the men were gone." And so she stepped up to coach the team. So I started asking her a million questions. I mean, I was just bombarding her question after question after question. And then finally, before I left the appointment, I asked her if I could write her great aunt's uh, biography. She was like, "Oh, absolutely, that'd be great." I did my research and a lot had been lost to time. So I wrote a novel based on a true story. And it's now picked up by Mandalay Pictures. It's being produced by Elizabeth Gelfin Stearns, who also took Still Alice from book to film. And so it's now in development, and we'll see. I'm excited. They're working really hard to bring it to the big screen.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's a really
Yeah.
great story. I mean,
Yeah.
Marjorie, just give like a one liner about what when the men were gone. I mean, obviously the title says a lot, but uh why it was so important for you to tell her story.
Yeah, she wanted, for reasons I won't reveal so that you'll all go out and read the book, but she wanted the kids on the football team not to sign up for the war when they were 16 or 17. She wanted them to finish their childhood before they go on to do things that men do. And so she was very determined to make sure that they had the experience that you grow up to have, you want to have when you're living in Texas. Every kid wants to grow up and play on their high school football team. It's amazing. And I mean, if you even see some of the stadiums here, they look like professional stadiums that high school kids play in. So she just wanted them to finish their childhood. That was a big piece of it before they go off to war and do things that men do.
It's such a great story. I love that book. Marjorie knows I'm a big fan. I'm waiting for my
Well, thank you.
part
You
to
know,
be
she, of course, as
executed.
you can imagine, had some pushback and everything. So the story is really framed around just a couple of weeks, which is her journey. The story is more of a journey than it is about football, but we do see a little snippets where we can tell she's a real knowledgeable football coach. I don't go into the weeds with it too much because I don't want to lose people, their interest in the story if they don't really know football. So she's just was an incredible woman ahead of her time. And I just wish I could have known her.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be able to
Eileen
tell her
Wilson.
story and everybody will feel like they have gotten to know her. So we'll all be better for that. All right. So
Well,
now let's talk about flag football, also known as flag ball to you, Marjorie.
that's right.
So
And to
flag
you.
ball. That, right. Well, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
We always talk about how sports really are the universal language, and bringing sports together and bringing sports to communities really is such a gift that we can give uh, adults and the whole entire and kids and families and everything. So, Marjorie, the Women's Flag Ball League. Tell us
That's
about
right.
the Women's Flag Ball League.
The Women's Flag Ball League. Oh, I'm just so excited about this league. We want to make it the premier league for women who want to play flag football. And we want this to grow and give opportunities because as we see right now, there are a lot of flag ball is becoming the it sport. We hear about it all the time. We see commercials about it all the time, but there's nothing professional. And this is going to take it to the next level. This is going to give women the opportunity to play at the highest level. It's interesting. I have to mention this. back in 2017, I was an assistant football coach at Texas Wesleyan University. And all the other men who were coaching had played football. They played in high school and they played in college. None of them had ever won a championship at the NFL level, even though one or two of them had played in the NFL. Well, the only opportunity I had was to play intramurals in college. That was the highest level a girl could play at the time. So my sorority actually won the Arizona State University flag football women's championship. So when I was coaching, I would kid the guys. I'd say, "Well, look, I'm the only one here who has won a championship in football at the highest level." And so that's what I felt like I had managed to accomplish. But now that level is going to be raised. If the level will get higher and higher for women. And so
And
not
it's
just
not easy.
it's
It's
not
not
easy.
it's not easy. I tried it. I had a friend back in 2008 or 2009 actually asked me to come try it here in Charlotte somewhere
Mhm.
on a mixed team and guys and girls. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I was competing back then. You know, it was in my competition days. I was at the height of my athleticism, if you will. And I'm like, okay, I probably won't be back as a player. I'll come watch. I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah.
No, it is. It's hard. And that's one of the reasons why I like the term flag ball, because I don't want people looking at it as a different level of football. It's a sport all its own. It is not a second tier tackle football league. It's not, if you can't play tackle, you'll play flag. No, flag ball is itself a game that deserves to be separated as what it is. It's almost like, softball is not a second level baseball. Softball is its own game. And flag football has its own nuances. And there are a lot of people that might be successful playing tackle football that might not have the same kind of success playing flag ball. And so I want flag ball to be its own entity, known for its own nuances, and really, really take it to the top. Take it to the top. I want the Summit Bowl to be the women's flag ball league equivalent of the Super Bowl, and really years from now see the interest level as high.
So, what is the Summit Bowl, Marjorie?
Well, that'll be the championship game for the Women's Flag Ball League. So the WFL will culminate in a Summit Bowl game, and it will be just like what we see with the Super Bowl. We'll have a playoff, and then we get to the big game, and we're going to do everything we can to make it like appeal to everybody from coast to coast. So the goal is to build teams all across the country and then maybe even internationally, which I think there's definitely interest there. And especially with the Olympics being a driving force, now that flag football will be an Olympic sport.
Well, it was a big deal at the Super Bowl last week. I can
Well, that's
remember,
right. It
uh,
was.
yeah, and, you know, I wanna be like Cam Newton when I play flag football again, and I wanna play it in cowboy boots like he did last week at the
Yeah.
Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
No, but
Oh, yeah, he was sporting his cowboy boots playing flag
Yeah.
football.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Well,
quite
that's
the
really, not easy to do when you're really in a serious competition.
No,
But
I was thinking about how slick that would be playing,
yeah,
flag football
right.
in cowboy boots.
but the USA men's flag team played the US. I mean, Team USA played Team Mexico as well, and they were in full uniform and they were in full competitive mode. And I went to that game 5-on-5, just like the Olympics, just like the WFL. And it was exciting, exciting. It was the place was packed, the crowd was into it, and the play was phenomenal. And that's what I want to bring to. I want America to see that women, now, even though this was a men's game, that women can play at that high level and draw that same kind of enthusiasm.
So, where do you think you developed? I know we talked a little bit about your dad and your mom in sports, but obviously, it's continued. So, where did you discover that this was going to be your life's mission? And I am just going to keep going and developing new things and developing entire new games pretty much with flag ball.
Well, I knew I was going to be involved in sports. I played high school sports. I played basketball. I had a chance to play at Arizona State University, but I didn't take the chance. I really regret that now. But there were reasons, and if I had played basketball for ASU, I probably wouldn't have had time to play flag football. So it all worked out really well. um, I knew I would be in the mix in football or in sports, period. Not just because of how I was raised in a sports family, but because I was loved it. I'm also very competitive, and I love to go toe to toe. And so I didn't think that I was going to one day be commissioner of a professional league. I did at one point, like I said, I coached football, and then I also owned a minor league baseball team. So I knew that I would probably have more of a future, not just in sports writing, but in the nitty gritty and in the ownership or in the running of a league or a team. But this has kind of played out in a way that I had not expected, and I'm really excited about the possibilities. I feel like my skills are well suited for bringing in a new league and working with people who are equally as committed and willing to work hard to make this happen. And so this one is kind of the one that kind of threw me for a loop, but here I am, and I'm really glad about it.
All right. So, Marjorie, you have many hidden talents, and I've been fortunate to hear some of the stories, but I think our listeners and viewers would love to know about how close to J.Lo you are.
Well, this is just what I was told. So, J Lo, I don't know. This is what I was told. I was a country music singer back in the day. I had a label, independent label out of Nashville, and I had a great producer. He was actually the guitarist for Roy Orbison. Has that really nice guitar on Pretty Women, and Pretty Woman. And anyway, though, so I got a call one day from Sony Records, and they told me that they were going to either go with a country music singer or with a pop singer, and that they were going to do some showcases and things like that. And then about, I think this was on a Friday, and that following Monday, I had neck surgery to repair a herniated disc, and they had to move my voice box, and it didn't really heal properly. And so I was out of the picture, and J Lo built a career. So yeah, she was the pop singer.
Yeah.
I
Marjorie was
found
a
out
breath
later.
away. Yeah.
What a
From,
story.
I know she was literally a breath away from becoming, taking away the career of J.Lo. So
Well,
we
I don't
applaud
know. I
about
think she
finding
would
out
have
as
made it
well.
anyway, and who knows what I would have done. But when I found out she was the pop singer, that they were considering me as the country and she as the pop, I just got a kick out of that.
All right. So Marjorie, also, in closing, where do you have a lot of energy? I know you personally, but you definitely have a lot of energy and you love to bowl. So let's talk about that. Like, let's talk about bowling because you're really good at it. And while you're focusing on flag ball, I know that you're really getting all your frustration out at the lanes.
I have so much fun. Okay, so I played tennis for years and years and years and years, and finally, a while back, I just got tired of it and thought I wanted to do something else. And then I got involved in other things, and I wasn't really playing any sport. And then I took up pickleball for a while, but then COVID hit. So then, about a year and a half ago, a friend of mine asked me if I'd go bowling with her, and I was like, bowling? I bowled when I was a kid. I really hadn't thought about bowling. And I went, and I had so much fun that I've now become a fanatic. I mean, all I want to do is get up in the morning and hit the bowling lanes. If they're not open, I'm probably standing at the door waiting for them to open the door. I just cannot bowl enough. I'm having so much fun with it, and it's become a social thing. I'm on a couple of teams. I bowl with my sister. She's not on teams, but we practice together. One of my daughters ended up joining a team, so we bowl together. My husband now. I mean, friends, and then new people that I've met in the league. So I am just having a ball with it. If my friend hadn't invited me, I never would have thought about it. But I liked it when I was a kid, and I should have thought of it on my own. But I'm glad that she invited me.
Yeah. Well, every time I call, you're like, I have to call you back. I'm at the bowling alley. I'm like,
Well, yes, of
okay. And
course.
it would seem if I did not know you, I'd be like, that's like an unusual blow off, but like I might use that one. Like I can't hear you because the bowling balls or whatever. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. You need to look up what the hours are and then call me off hours because if I could be there all day,
That's
I
right.
will be.
Yeah.
So when you go on vacation, do you hunt out the nearest bowling alley?
No. No, because if I go on vacation, I'm not going to take all my equipment and I don't want to use house balls because they don't play the same way and then I'll get a bad score.
Yeah, bowling balls don't travel very well,
No, I think it'd
especially in
be,
the aircraft. You have
yeah.
to pay extra for that to travel on American
Yeah, I
Airlines.
just
Yeah.
wanna yeah, so, no, I don't take it or I don't go bowling when I go out of town, but when I get back, I sure make up for it, so,
So do
Yes.
you play tennis anymore? I'm just interested in that
I
because I
don't
love
play
to play
tennis
tennis.
anymore. I played for, many, many years. I played for a short time on my high school my senior year, I think it was, my high school tennis team, and I played on USTA and all these others for a long time, and then as a sports writer, I also covered professional tennis. So, I went to Wimbledon for many years and the US Open and went to Germany for Davis Cup and Czechoslovakia back then for Fed Cup and got to know a lot of the professionals and they were great people, most of them. And so I was in the middle of the tennis world for a good while, but I don't play anymore. Mhm.
And Marjorie is very humble, but she's very good friends with Martina Navratilova, and was really important in her career, also covering her and writing stories about her. So, anything interesting about Martina that our my tennis co-host here would like to know, and our listeners?
Well, no, she was just great. She was great. She lived in Fort Worth. I was with the Fort Worth Star Telegram, so I covered her career. And she was really good to me. She gave me interviews anytime I wanted. In fact, when she would be out of town sometimes and she'd play in a tournament that I wasn't going to, something like maybe the Canadian Open or some of the smaller tournaments, but that are still significant. She would call me after a match and give me an interview on the phone so that I could write a story about what she was doing and how she was. So she would just take it upon, she knew I wanted her to call me, but she did. She actually did. She would call me after some of these matches, and then when we went to, she had defected from Czechoslovakia when she was a teenager, came to the United States, and then back in '86, she was representing the United States for the Federation Cup, and they were playing in Prague, and it would be the first time she was going back to her home country since she had defected. And so she called me and let me know she had gotten her visa. Then she called me and told me her flight information. And so when she was actually coming into Prague, looking out the window for the first time, I was sitting with her in first class and I got everything from the very moment because she told me where she was going to be, what her flight, and we sat together and so she has been really great for my career because she's been so accessible and all. And then after I quit being a sports writer and she stopped playing professionally, then we just continued as a friendship. We had a great professional relationship, and now we've got a good friendship.
So, Marjorie, it's interesting. I've known you for years now, and I think that, obviously you have an incredible career as a sports reporter, but so much of that has to do with because with you, obviously, not only knowing and being a real fan, but also just being a very cool person that people want to talk to and people want to connect with. So, is that like your mother or your father, or a little bit of both? Where I know your father was a dentist, so obviously he had a good bedside manner, I'm sure. But where did all of this come from that people would just want to expose themselves and share their stories with you?
Oh my gosh, it did. I was my parents. I think the greatest compliment I can get is that I am like my parents. If even my siblings, we fight over it. I'll be with one or two or three of my sisters, and I'll say, "Well, I do that more like mom," and they'll go, "I'm more like mom." No, I'm more like mom. I'm more like dad. I'm more like that. We fight over who has more mom and dad qualities, and it's really kind of fun. And I think my parents would get a kick out of it because we want to be like them so badly. And they were both my mom. Years after kids had grown up and all that, she got letters from our neighbors, kids from the neighborhood, kids that we went to school with, and even phone calls saying, "You, Mrs. Herrera, you made an impact on my life. You really were one of the most important adults in my life. And then my dad, Dr. Herrera, you were the best dentist. And even I went to a high school reunion recently, and all these people that I didn't know at the time were my dad's patients. They would come up to me and say, your dad was my dentist. And then they'd smile and they'd have the best teeth ever. And, he took such great care of everybody. And Santa Fe has always been a very artsy town, and famous people would come to town, and he was always the one. If they had a toothache or they chipped a tooth or something, they would call my dad. And so every now and then I'd go to the office with him so I could see a movie star that he was working on. So there are a lot of good dentists in town, but my dad was the best, probably the best in the state and probably the best in the world. He went to Northwestern University and is very well educated, and very gentle. My parents were just really salt of the earth, really good people. Just, I can't even brag about them enough because there's not enough time to, we could have a whole show that is tell us about your parents. It would be unbelievable. I was so fortunate.
That is beautiful. Well, we're fortunate because you're their child. So we get to spend time with you. And I know I'm fortunate because I get to spend extra time with you doing many things. And we're super excited about flag ball. So what can people expect, and where can they find us, and how can they be supporters of flag ball, women's flag ball league?
Well, we're going to get our website built. We're in the process of doing that. Women's flagballleague.com. We're going to be playing in a introductory event in the Dallas Fort Worth area during the World Cup. Unless logistically we have to change that, but if we change the date, it'll still be the same exposure. So we're just going to get the word out. Shows like this, thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. Social media, I've been interviewed by NBC5. I've been on a lot of different TV shows, radio shows, have been interviewed for, Fort Worth Magazine and 360, Fort Worth business, all kinds of things that have given me the opportunity to get the word out. And so I see us continuing to do that, and people will definitely know about the Women's Flag Ball League.
Yeah, that's great. I think if they follow along Elisa on Instagram, follow along me, follow along you, they'll slowly start to find out where to get all the details on the Women's Flag Ball League. And I am so excited, and it's going to be lots of fun. It's going to be fun, and there's nothing really like it. And so obviously we love live sports. We love getting families and communities involved and watching athletes perform at the highest level. There's really nothing like it. I mean, live sports are the best. You can go into a movie studio and re-loop and re-edit, and same thing with music, but sports, you go out there and you bring it all, and you don't get a chance to recut it, re-edit, redo it, rewrite it. So it's going to be lots of fun.
Well, you bring up a good point. So I was in New York with a friend of mine a few years back, and St. John's was playing in the NCAA tournament, March Madness. And a lot of New Yorkers were crowded around this TV at this location. And it was the last second of the game. And one of the kids from St. John had a chance to bring the ball down the court and maybe get the winning basket. But when he reached mid-court, he accidentally dribbled off his foot and the ball went out of bounds, and that was it. And I started to cry. And the night before, my friend and I had seen Death of a Salesman on Broadway, and I didn't cry. So she looked at me when I was crying then. She said, "Why are you crying now over a basketball game, but you didn't cry over that beautiful, everything about Death of a Salesman?" And I said, "Because I love Death of a Salesman, and Brian Dennehy had done a fantastic job. And I said, but I'm crying now because this is real life. This kid it will never forget this the rest of his life. And it's a moment that will make him sad. And so it makes me sad. And that's what it is about live sports. Like you said, it moments happen that change people's life in an instant. And we're the witnesses, and we can't help but get emotionally connected. That's just part of it.
And that's why live sports are so special and important, because we can, even if we don't know that athlete or know that coach or know the parent of that player or know the family dynamic, we definitely feel like, which is why I think that people sit on their sofas and they're like, I could have made that shot. I could have done
Yeah,
that, because they feel
exactly.
like they really can, because they're so connected to what's going on, but they definitely could not. The likelihood is zero that they could have done it. But I think live sports really just give us all of that. We could have made that buzzer beater shot, and we could have made that field goal. And it empowers us to go out there and dream and think about things that we could do. And even if we can't do it, we still imagine doing it. And it's so fun to watch. So that's why we all love live sports.
Yeah, you get so when you spend
Mhm.
week after week with
Yeah.
your favorite team and your favorite, I see it with the Panthers, and I see how my husband is so entrenched in what happens with the Carolina Panthers that when we lose a game or when Bryce has a good game versus a bad game or a bad game versus a good game, you feel it because
Mhm.
you spend so much time with the team and with the player and reading all the blogs and social media and you spend so much time with it
Yeah. And you're
and it
emotionally
becomes
invested.
you're emotionally invested.
Exactly.
My finance teacher in college would say, if you're not invested, you can't collect. So, which
That's
is
true.
true in everything. So like I kind of use that, and that's like something that, as for me, as a
And
as a
that's with
mantra of
anything.
life. If you're not invested, you can't collect.
Right.
So you got to be invested in things in order to have the fruit that comes with that, and good and bad. So the collection, if your team loses, is that you're going to cry. If you feel invested in a player or you like something, then you're going to have that emotional connection. So we all can agree. And I love that three women can sit here and talk about sports, and we're all feeling it brings everybody together. And I love that as well.
Oh, I do
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So I'm really excited. Well, thank you, Marjorie. I love you lots. I'm your biggest fan. And I'm glad that we get to do many things together, because I've seen your performance, and you're a winner. So that's a
Well,
great
thank
thing
you. Thank
for
you.
us.
And thank you for inviting me. It was nice talking to you both.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining in to another episode of Bench to Bold. And we'll see you back next week.